Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, folks, is it hammer time in Michigan land? Time is up for the sign stealer guy. Yep, on June 6th and 7th, they're going to have the Committee on Infractions meeting where Michigan, I guess they'll plead their case, and it's not going to probably go very well over those 2 days. I mean, that's just what, Friday and Saturday. And the NCAA is going to begin handling this situation with the sign stealing and the lack of cooperation from Michigan and all of that. And I've got a pretty good idea how I think this is going to play out. And of course, we got to talk about whether or not, are they going to keep the Natty? Are they going to get a postseason ban? How many scholarships they're definitely going to lose a bunch of scholarships. What's the fine going to be? And I've got a pretty good idea what I think that's going to be. But of course, what brought me into this, being a Tennessee guy myself, was the possibility that Michigan and Connor Stallions had sent Tennessee signs and signals to South Carolina back in the day in 2022. To derail not only Tennessee, but also Clemson, which 100% that happened. South Carolina just rose up from nowhere. Couldn't score a touchdown if you'd have paid them. And all of a sudden, they scored 9 in a row against Tennessee and then went to Clemson and won that ball game. And they weren't playing worth a crap. And of course, you know, right after that, they went 2-7. 2-7.
No way.
So let's get into this. And they were actually talking about this on a show that has covered this as well as anybody. Probably better than anybody, honestly. And that's Buckeye Scoop. And they actually talked about Tennessee and that whole situation a little bit last night. I'll let you listen to a minute or two of it here.
Well, for me, it was funny because it was a Tennessee fan. It was a Tennessee fan, and I want to say it was like 6 months before any of this had ever broken. A guy that I know that's got Tennessee season tickets had brought me. I've been down to a couple of Tennessee games with him. He told me that there was some message on a board about a guy from Tennessee, some person who was paid to record the signals for Michigan. And I didn't have any idea what he was talking about. I remember thinking, what is this guy talking about? And he goes, no, but this is a story that's kind of going on these Tennessee boards right now. He goes, but I reached out to the guy who wrote the story on there, and he goes, and he's super credible. He goes, I really suggest you look into this. And to be honest with you, I kind of blew the whole thing off because the story was so outrageous and so crazy and so patently illegal that I just couldn't believe that anybody would really be involved in it. I thought maybe it was like a gimmick or maybe some, TikTok people were doing. I mean, I didn't know what it was, but I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that this was a Michigan sanctioned, Michigan financed, Michigan organized activity to advance scout teams, even teams in other conferences as potential opponents for them down the road. So it was a crazy story, but it always stayed with me because when you've been doing this as long as we've been doing this, and this all the time, we'll get stuff sent to us, and you and I will both kind of go, does this have the ring of truth? Does this ring true to you? And when you've been doing it as long as we can smell the stuff. Like we've had provocateurs send us stuff that you and I both knew immediately was false. We knew it was like fake. And you got to laugh at it. And you're just like, oh God, you guys aren't as clever as you think you are. But then occasionally you get sent something and you're like, man, yeah, this is legit. And that felt legit, but I just couldn't really wrap my mind around it. So when the thing started to break, my first thought was my friend in Tennessee, and I called him and he's like, dude, I told you about this 6 months ago. Where have you been on this? So,
yeah, that kind of got the ball rolling. People started hearing about this scouting deal where they were sending scouts out to check out other teams outside of the Big Ten. And Tennessee and Clemson were a couple of the teams that could get in the way of Michigan making that 4-team playoff. And they didn't want to take any chances, I don't believe. So they went ahead and got signals and signs for those two teams along with some others in case they either faced them or if they needed them knocked out. That's the understanding.
Allegedly.
So here was the message post that he was talking about. And this was actually on VolQuest, and a lot of you folks know what VolQuest is, and this is Arnie Palmer alert. And here that you can't really read it from there, but here it says, oh, do I have a story on that? One of my little brother's friends is a scout for them, Michigan. They paid him to travel to the UT Vandy game, had planned it before the loss, obviously, to try to steal our signs. By the way, they also sent a scout to the Tennessee-Kentucky game, which was right before the South Carolina game. So this was obviously a backup to the backup in case we won that game, in case they had to face us in the 4-team playoff. The UT Vandy game had planned it before the loss, obviously, to try to steal our signs. He's from Nashville originally, so he just went anyway, even after our loss, since it was Thanksgiving. Says he and the others are never allowed to talk to Harbaugh directly about it. And again, Mr. Arnie Palmer alert got famous over this. Said, no clue if related, but I posted on here a couple of months ago about a mutual friend of mine that was working for Michigan, going to other schools' games and stealing signs, the poster noted. They'd pay his flights, lodging, food, and seats right behind the team's bench for him to get video, etc. Michigan is pulling out all the stops. Can check my history to confirm if you want. Guy had tickets to our game at Vandy, as they'd already paid for his stuff, thinking they'd see us in the playoffs before we lost to South Carolina. And this was on Ross Dellinger's X back in the day. Said last October, Connor Stallions bought a single ticket to Tennessee's game versus Kentucky. 3 minutes later, he transferred it to a person who attended the game in a seat facing Vols sideline. Stallions also bought tickets to Georgia, Bama, Clemson, and last 2 SEC title games. And of course, this has been talked a lot about Michigan may have helped disrupt potential playoff opponent. Was it Tennessee? This has been talked about a ton. It said a day after Sports Illustrated reported that Michigan taped and attempted to steal signs from opponents outside of the Big Ten, including Clemson, Georgia, Tennessee. Football Scoop reported more details that could potentially connect Tennessee. Says Football Scoop's John Bryce, Michigan not only scouted college football playoff opponents, but also might have assisted their opponents. Moreover, a source with direct knowledge indicated to Football Scoop that Michigan may have attempted to assist the opposition of a potential college football playoff opponent in an effort to disrupt that team's potential path to the playoff. And of course, the Tennessee-Kentucky game was the perfect one for him to get. Then they could send those signs to South Carolina. And of course, the one team that was playing both Tennessee and Clemson, South Carolina. And of course, the Clemson folks wrote about it as well. Said Clemson football and the mystery of the stolen signs. Says on Tuesday, multiple sources began revealing information about some of the non-conference opponents that Stallions targeted, which included Clemson. Says this was back in 2022. Said Clemson is declining comment, but a report from Buckeye Huddle says Michigan's alleged signal stealer bought a ticket to a 2022 Clemson home game. That makes Clemson the first known non-Big Ten school wrapped in the Michigan scandal, and Tennessee. Says enter the South Carolina Gamecocks. Said by Thursday, the connection had been made that Stallions may have been sharing the signs with other programs, perhaps in an attempt to thwart possible opponents they could face in the college football playoff. Enter the South Carolina Gamecocks, who were 6-4, 3-4 in the SEC through their first 10 games, and coming off a 38-6 loss to Florida when they hosted Tennessee. At which time the Gamecocks went from being able to score 1 touchdown against Missouri, 2 field goals against Florida, 16 points total against 2 middle-of-the-road SEC teams at the time, both of which were, I think, finished 6-6, and I think they both lost their bowl games. But after only being able to score 1 touchdown in 2 SEC games, they come and play Tennessee, who's playoff bound, and scored 9 straight.
9 times?
9 times.
Have you ever seen a team ever score 9 straight? Maybe if they're playing Little Sisters of the Poor or Fort Worth fighting dust mites, you might see 9 in a row. But I've never seen it against an SEC opponent, certainly not one that was going to the playoff. And then, of course, they beat Clemson at Clemson. And it talked about the theory that's popped up that if Stallions scouted and recorded Tennessee and Clemson, he shared that information with South Carolina. That might explain why a team that averaged 21 points a game against Power 5 competition could suddenly score 99 points against 2 of the better programs on their schedule. And we know one of the things that Connor did when he went on Bussin' Boys was he was bragging about how he was really good at sending signals and signs to other schools to help derail teams that were in his way or Michigan's way. And he would just change the header to another name of another college so that they wouldn't know it was from Michigan. And he was real proud of it. Now, he has not been cooperative when it comes to actually working with the NCAA. He wouldn't answer their questions. He even said he couldn't remember if he was on Central Michigan's sideline wearing their shirt and hat and wearing those fancy glasses with the blue light on it. But he could remember 3,000 signs in his head. I guess he has an eidetic memory. He's a Sheldon. So anyway, he's just been giving them the runaround. But come June 6th and 7th, a lot of this thing's going to come to a head. I don't know if we'll ever find out about the South Carolina thing. You know, about Shane Beamer has a history of taking information he's not supposed to. He got fined $25,000 for it. I don't think he'd be stupid enough to do that and risk a $6 million a year job, which is now $7 or $8 million, by taking those. But he might look the other way if an analyst got the signs and signals, because that's normally how that works. He would connect with somebody who's on his level. At the time he was an analyst at Michigan, he'd find another one. Hey, here's the signals and signs. You might want to give this to the right people. Might make you look pretty good. I know it worked for Connor. Connor got a game ball. Have you ever heard of an analyst getting a game ball? Ever in the history of college football? Guy made $60,000 a year. But he somehow had money to pay for all these tickets and lodging and all that. But Michigan has no idea how that happened. Not a clue. I guess that $60,000, well, he did sell all those vacuum cleaners. Used vacuum cleaners. I guess that's where the money came from. And I know old Jackpot's going to go crazy over this. South Carolina guy, he's the biggest YouTuber down there for South Carolina. They've got him and the Locked On South Carolina guy who does a good job too. But yeah, he's going to be going nuts. He doesn't believe that this is what happened.
It's not true. That's impossible.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
No!
But down deep, Jackpot, you know it did. You know it did. God. Ruined my 2022 season. Sign stealer guy.
The sign stealer guy.
Sign stealer guy. They're going to get their at least Michigan's going to get their comeuppance. And now let's talk about what I think is going to happen to them. I'm at about 25% chance they take away the natty, because the reality is Charlie Baker and his group of mistake makers, he went out and said, oh, they want it legitimate. You know, he was talking about the playoff. He wanted everybody to believe that the playoff was legitimate. So he went out there and said Michigan won fair and square and painted himself in a corner, in my opinion. And it's going to be really hard to take that natty away. What really should happen is they should vacate every single game that Connor Stallions was on the sidelines and any championships they won in any of the games, including Central Michigan ought to give up that game where he was on that sideline. That's what should happen, but I don't think with the politics, the way things are today, that'll be the case. So they'll probably hold on to the national title, because I don't think Charlie Baker wants that smoke, because those Michigan folks would lose their freaking minds over that. It would not. I wouldn't want to be Charlie Baker if that happens. It could. I've got it at 25% chance. But what I do believe is going to happen, and this is going to be the painful part, a 2-year postseason ban. That's going to hurt. And then probably 30 scholarships, and then about a $15 million fine. And I base that on the fact that Tennessee, over the $64,000 that they had paid out, or Jeremy Pruitt had, they got a 25 scholarship loss and no postseason ban because they cooperated. Now, Michigan has not cooperated at all. They even tried to make Jim Harbaugh the highest paid coach in the land. And Ward Manuel has done nothing, really, except say, well, there's nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
So that's what I think is going to happen. Now, it's going to take a while, up to 45 days after June 6th and 7th, but we'll probably get some interesting news coming out of those 2 days. Almost certainly it'll leak out, and we'll find out some more information. But their big days are coming, and it's just a couple days away. It's going to get wild. and I'm here for it because I'm not happy about this. They screwed up my 2022. We were heading to the playoff, and we were the #1 offense in the country. We were playing great, and then all of a sudden, South Carolina just comes up like a phoenix from the ashes, and nobody can beat them for 2 games. They beat 2 playoff-bound teams, and then suddenly they go 2-7 after that. Same quarterback, same head coach. The 2 most important people you got to keep for continuity they had, and they go 2-7. Just make sense of that.
Bro, it's in the billions. It cannot happen. Would not happen.
Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, 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 hit that button right there. Will not cost you a dime. Help you get my videos. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy based on your viewing history. And check out Buckeye Scoop, man. They've done a great job on this. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.
I'm just curious. I saw you shuffling your checks with your right hand. Can you do that with both hands?
No.
Can't do it with both hands.
No, sir.